Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Writing Inspirations with Marky Books. Here we are with our new guest for today, Katy Haye. Hello Katy, how are you today?
Hello, I'm doing very well, thank you. Good to be here.
I'm happy too that we can talk. So, tell me, Katy, how many years have you had since your debut as a writer?
Okay, so I've been writing, this is year 10 actually. Crikey, it'll be 10 years at the end of November. So I'm kind of getting the hang of it now, I'm pleased to say. I decided, supposedly, according to my family, I decided when I was 4 that I wanted to be a writer. So then there was a bit of practice, and then I've started publishing 10 years ago now.
Wow, that's impressive. 4 years old? What did inspire you to get to want that at such a short age?
Yeah, the story my mum tells is she was reading me a book before bed or something similar. And I said, do you have to pay people to turn your stories into a book? And she said, no, they pay you. And I was just sold on that. I thought that would be the best career ever. It's a little more complicated than that, unfortunately.
No, of course, it's always more complicated that one. There's no easy jobs.
Yeah.
So tell me, on your debut, did you struggle with something in particular?
It's hard to say because I find every single book is different, and there'll be something, some things go easier in one book and then harder in the next. So it's really hard to predict. I pay much more attention these days to planning the book than I did at the start of my career. I was kind of happy at the beginning to just jump in and write. And then I'd find I was writing myself into dead ends and things weren't happening that they needed to. And I'd kind of got all these words, but not a coherent story. So I've become much tighter at plotting out. I mean, I don't plot every single detail. And I always say, if I end up with the same book that I started with, something's gone wrong, because it should have kind of come alive and come into itself during the writing process.
I completely agree.
Yeah, but I am much, much clearer on plotting out what I expect to happen in general terms.
If you plan everything in such a strict way, then what if you have a better idea what you're writing? It happens.
Yeah. And I kind of like it when the characters go, no, that's not quite right. We'll wander off and do something a bit different. That usually helps to drive it forward. And it makes it come alive when the characters do things themselves.
Exactly. So tell me, have you ever faced a slump or that kind of thing before?
I haven't ever had anything hideously serious, I wouldn't say. I mean, I kind of have times when I get stuck with something, but I generally find if I just take a little bit of a break, I feel like I've written enough now where I know if I'm kind of, I can't write that because it's just going to be difficult and I need to knuckle down, versus, I can't write that, it won't come. No, because there's something the matter. So I need to give my brain a bit of time to process and come up with the solution. And generally, if I get stuck, just leave it a day or two. I like long walks. I advise long walks, get out in nature. And it just gives your brain that space to breathe and go, I tell you what, this character ought to be doing. It's such and such. And I absolutely love those moments. I adore it when my brain just goes, that'll fix it. Brilliant.
Well, it does sound interesting. So, how is your writing experience these days? Do you feel like it's easier?
Yeah, I feel like I know what a story should look like and how it should, kind of the structural terms of it. So I know very swiftly if I'm writing something and I'm like, oh no, that's veering off in the wrong direction. So I can rein it in a lot easier. And I just write an awful lot faster these days. I'm trying to stick to every 3-month publishing schedule. So I need to know what I'm doing and not write myself into corners. And it's going fine so far.
That's amazing. 3 months? Wow.
Yeah, 4 books a year. Well, there's a lot of people who are like, I can write a book a month, and which just blows my mind. So I think that's kind of a nice middle ground.
I suppose depends on how many pages it had, I suppose.
Yeah, you couldn't write Lord of the Rings in a month.
I personally just worked on books that are like 50 pages. So I haven't never do like short ones. So,
Right.
well, tell me, did you struggle with something in particular when you started publishing or doing your books?
Well, on the publishing side of things, I vastly struggled, and I do still struggle a bit with the marketing side of things because it's kind of such a different. I'm very much a introverted, quiet. I want to sit in my tower and write books like a gremlin, and then just kind of push them out under the door, really, and then someone else could pick them up and sell them for me. That would be the absolutely perfect scenario. So, kind of having to write the book, that's fine. Having to then go out and tell people about it is much, much harder. So that's definitely been very tricky. So I'm kind of part of it is I'm very introverted. I'm very, very quiet and don't want to put myself out there. There's also the British thing where you don't talk about yourself because that's very, very rude. Unlike these brash Americans who will just tell anyone anything. So that's taken a while to kind of get over and get comfortable with what I'm happy to do marketing wise.
Actually, I do think a bit like on the British way that talking about you too much, it's not entirely a good thing, but everything with a balance, I suppose.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a bit about your books. How many have you already published till today?
I have, I think we're at 26 now. I started off writing young adult books, and I've got, that would make it 19, and it might be 19 or it might be a couple more than that. So did a load of young adult. I find them incredibly hard to sell. So I moved on recently, just last year, to male fantasy stories, and they're selling much better. So we have, my first series was The Assassin's Soulmate, The Prince's Soulmate. First book is Assassin. There are 5 in that series, which are doing really well. And then I've just launched the Pirates Revenge series. So this one is out at the moment, and I'm just polishing the second one in the series at the moment. And the third in the series is drafted, but it needs some revision and a bit of polishing up.
That's great. Oh, wow, I didn't know you already printed the books.
Yeah, it's so nice having a proper book in your hands. It makes it real in a way that the e-files don't.
How did you thought about that kind of culture? I find it interesting that it was like a mix of Middle Eastern, but with something else.
Yeah, so I live in Lincoln in the UK, which is there's heaps and heaps of history here. So it started out as a Roman town, and there's loads of medieval history. We have an absolutely gorgeous Gothic cathedral, and just the other side, 200 meters away from that, is a glorious castle, which was founded by William the Conqueror. He came wandering through Lincoln in 1068 and said, this would be a good place for a castle. And it's still standing, and there's just heaps of history in that. I'm fascinated by medieval history, and a big chunk of that for kind of East-West relations is, of course, the Crusades, which were kind of the West's first opportunity of, hey, I'll tell you what, we know best, we know how the world should be, and trying to enforce that on other people. And the world that Assassin and the Pirates Revenge books are set in is kind of that world slightly reimagined. So it's a fantasy that's loosely based on countries either side of the Mediterranean Sea, but I've changed it up a bit. So there's absolutely the religions are made up, but they're very loosely Christianity and Islam, and the worlds are recognizable, but again they've changed a bit. So my characters are gay, and that's acceptable and normal in these worlds. There's friction between the two religions, the different sides, countries, but there isn't anything as awful as the Crusades going on. There's, especially in Assassin, there's a lot of kind of manipulation going on where the white countries are trying to force the Christian countries are trying to force the Islamic countries more into their way of thinking, but it's much more modern, and it's kind of inspired by what might have happened if Western Christian countries hadn't gone, I tell you what, we know best for everybody, and tried to enforce that around the world.
Yeah, that did happen actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, good. So, what book are you working on right now?
Well, I'm working on The Merchant and His Lout at the proofing stage. So that will be out by the end of this month. That'll be out to reviewers. It comes out on the 24th of July. So I've got a month. I want to have a month between sending out to reviewers and launch. I'm also going back to revise the third in the Pirates Revenge series, which is The Hero and His Slave. So I've written the first draft of that, but it's quite rough and ready. So that will now need to be revised and made ready for my editor.
Wow, your editor is quite fast, actually.
Yeah, I kind of get everything slotted in.
You finish and then, boom, publish.
Yep. No messing about.
Well, that's actually good. I haven't found a good editor yet, actually. My books are trapped in editing hell, thanks to that.
That can be tricky.
Yeah. So if without a good editor, what can we do, right?
Yeah, that's it. You need someone who kind of chimes with what you're trying to do with the book and doesn't try and change it into what they think would have been better. So, yeah, sympathies.
Are you working on a parallel series to your main books right now, like a spin-off or just anthologies?
Yeah, I mean, really, the Pirates are very much a spin-off from the Princess Soulmate books. The pirate captain features in the first series. And then doing another, I'm planning out for the end of this year, it should be, one called The Courtesan's Soulmate, which again takes the soulmate concept from the Prince's Soulmate series. It's set in the same world, but different characters, but kind of they're aware of the characters in the original series. So it's kind of I don't know what constitutes a spin-off versus what's just it's in the same universe.
Technically, a spin-off, it's a story that is set in the same universe, but doesn't have anything to do with the other. Just like when in some movies that are actually connected, but the stories just barely mention a bit of the other. Like, I don't know, put a picture of an actor that appeared on that first movie, and that's it. Usually just to say that they are happening on the same universe, but facing different things.
That sounds about right for it.
Okay, so I see that you already have all your plans for the end of the year full. So you are going to do 2 more books for this year.
Yeah, at least. I might sneak in a third. So the Pirates one is going to be a series of 4. So first one's out, second one July, the third one, I think that makes it October. Yes. And then I might kind of intersect. So the first with the Courtesan's Soulmate, I might release that in November. My birthday's in November, so it's kind of like, let's have a celebration that month. And then, so it will overlap with the last in the Pirates Revenge series.
Okay. That's great. So tell me, do you feel that your life changed since the moment you started, writing or using your pen?
Probably, yeah. It's kind of hard to put because it's so gradual and such an evolution. But I absolutely love it. I mean, since I made more of a focus on the writing, in myself, I would say I'm vastly much happier. It's very woo-woo, but I believe my purpose in this life, in this world, is to tell stories. That's just how my mind works, how everything is falling into place. So, yeah, I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing now that I'm telling stories as often as I can, as much as I can.
That sounds lovely. I would like that to have that mindset someday too. So, Katy, tell me, how did you first draft your main character from your series?
I find the characters tend to spring to life. They're kind of the first thing that I will get when I'm getting ideas for a book. So I kind of want to expand from that just so I've got some idea of what's happening. I use the 8-part story structure. So I'll try and I'll have what usually seems to crop into my mind is the opening scene. So I'll have the opening scene, I'll have something kind of pivotal at the midpoint, and then know what I'm working towards. I'll sketch out a brief plan that's just like a sentence per couple of sentences per 8 points, and then start writing. I quite often do a bit of kind of writing into it. So I write some stuff that won't be in the book at all. But if it's not on the page, then I might write a first meeting between the characters, just to get them a bit straighter in my head, so I know what they're like, how they would react to things and that kind of. So there'll be a little bit of writing that probably no one else will see, and then I can start into the book.
So you write something that feels like alive first and not like following an archetype.
I try and focus quite a bit on this. So what are the tropes going to be in the book? And then what tropes how does that make the characters come across? So in Assassin, I've got my assassin who kind of should be cold and deadly. Actually, he's a cinnamon roll. So I describe him as feral cinnamon roll. And then the prince is handsome prince trope, but he's the kind of smart intellectual one, whereas the assassin's much more rash and
charismatic.
Yeah. That's kind of what comes through as I'll be writing little snippets of bits and pieces to get the hang of what these characters are and how they're going to react in the story.
Okay. So on your books, for the first 3, we have the prince and the assassin, and then after that we'll move to another characters, or it's going to be the prince and the assassin all the series?
The whole series is the prince and assassin. They have a lot to work out from a very dramatic, and it's very much an enemies to lovers thing. And it's kind of the way I've done so that they're soulmates. They are destined to be together, but there's an awful lot of stuff that they have to clear up before they're going to reach their happily ever after. And then also I've thrown a load of political stuff, family stuff. So kind of each book has a little arc, and in each book they get closer together until at the end kind of they're rock solid, but it's all the external stuff that they're having to deal with so they can finally get their happy ever after.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. It's a nice trope. I mean, if they were just promised from birth, it will be kind of boring if it's just going to that point. And actually, I think it's more engaging, reading about a relationship that grows. I mean, it's not that writing about couples that are already set from in the first part of the story. It's not wrong, but we all know it's always get messy because jealousy and then doubts of the relationship. I don't know, it gets old, at least for me. So I prefer so I don't mind the slow burn.
Yeah. Slow, mine, I describe it that kind of the physical stuff is quite fast burn, but actually the emotional and getting on the same page as each other is much, much slower because they have all the stuff to get over with.
Yeah, I think that Katy thing's interesting for those who likes to, read about that. So, in which platforms your books are right now for people to get them?
They are exclusive to Amazon, I'm afraid. So people can get them on Kindle Unlimited. There seems to be a lot of my reads are through Kindle Unlimited. So have a look there. My website is www.katyhaye.com. It's KATYHAYE. I'm on Twitter and started Instagram and TikTok fairly recently, and I'm having loads of fun. I'm not sure I'm doing the right things, but it's enjoyable.
That's how it needs to be.
Paperbacks and ebooks, whichever you prefer.
Personally, I plan to start digitally before printing to test the waters.
That's probably sensible.
Are you planning to go to a live event to engage with your fans that you can talk about?
I don't have anything planned at the moment, unfortunately. An awful lot of them seem to be in America, which is a bit out of reach for me. I might. Several friends are going to Rare in Edinburgh, and I might see if I can sort that for next year, but I'm too late for this year, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah, I read about it. Yeah, it happened like 2 months ago, right?
Yeah, I think about then. Yeah.
No, and it's because Marcus was working on something about that this year.
Right.
For now, that's everything, Katy. Thank you so much for coming with us and talking about your books.
Thank you for the invitation. That's been good fun.
This was Writing Inspiration with Marky Woods. See you later. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.